they have separate laws, right? Before I carry on, I'll take you.
So if China is at the lower end of the power structure, why haven't any economic sanctions been imposed on China?
No. Like, the thing is this, right? What we're telling you is that, like, what we're telling you is Hong Kong has different, like, economic policies, like, to China, right? We're not telling you that China is very good at separating its economic transactions and its, like, political conflicts. I think China has been very good at that. In the case, like, in the Shinkaku Islands, where it still continues to have economic relations, even with, like, with those countries who it's not, like, who it's like, not particularly politically aligned with, like, we don't think that's a relevant to that. But moreover, about, like, why China can't use force, right? And this is very important. We've told you how, like, the presence of USA, like, in the South China Sea acts as a deterrent for them. We told you how the fact that, like, Hong Kong has a very strong media house, at the point of which you get violent, especially with, like, such international presence. We tell you that, like, it's like China cannot, like China is not going to face, like, the political repercussions that it would, considering that it's facing so many political conflicts, considering that there's an open threat to them, like the threat by the USA, stop heckling, sit, that there's an open threat by, like, the USA and Japan. We think, like, the fact that there's an open threat is enough of a deterrent to China not to use force against, like, or against Hong Kong, right? Then the point about silencing media and why that's also very important, right? Because we tell you that when China decided to use water guns, like, the fact that it blew up on Twitter and Facebook meant that it became huge, right? Like, obviously China, like, could not then use the water guns. Like, China could not use water guns in the future. We think all these things are very important, right? Like, lastly, on why people need to demand for an aggressive stance and why the timing is right now, right? And they haven't engaged with us on this. We tell you that currently, if you're agreeing that the movement is dying out, we need to show the people of Hong Kong that we're doing something substantially different to what we've been doing in the past, so that they join your movement, right? At the point of which you say that people are people are doing, at the point of time in which you say that, like, the movement is dying out, we need to show people that we are going for an aggressive stance, right? That we are fighting for complete democracy, because our identity is different, and because we don't want China silencing our media, we don't want China to be able to suppress us at any time they please, we don't want China to increase taxes and, like, disincentivize companies from investing in us. Before the last point, I'll take you.
Alright, sir, what is the new thing that you do that brings China to the negotiating table, contrary to what's been happening right now?
Right. The new thing that we do is, like this is not like seceding from China. This is Hong Kong saying that we don't want to be a part of China. Right? China cannot use brute force against Hong Kong for all the reasons I've told you about. Like because of the media house, because of, like, the USA and other forces that exist currently there. Right? We tell you that, like, China has to respect Hong Kong's cultural identity. At the very least, what we're going to get, at the very least, like, we have to make this aggressive stance so that more people join the movement. Right? Why is the timing right? Like Partha told you at, like, why China is currently on the back foot in, like, political terms, right? They haven't engaged us at all, besides, like, shrugging off, saying no, like Japan's not remilitarizing or whatever. We tell you that there are many disincentives for China not to use force. We tell you that Hong Kong treats itself as a separate identity. There is an imminent need, like, now when the movement, like, if we agree that the movement is dying out, there's an imminent need to give it one last shot before it phases out completely. We think we have to show people that we're doing something substantially different and we're fighting for, like, we're fighting for complete democracy. We think the fact that Hong Kong being a melting pot of different cultures, many people of which, like, China does not accept, right? China has very strict political laws otherwise, and Partha also spoke about this. The fact that you can't migrate from cities to villages, the fact that they don't allow people to immigrate into China. Hong Kong doesn't have those same things, right? Hong Kong needs to protect the fact that it has its own cultural identity. It is a melting pot of different things. At the very least, we're going to be aggressive. We're going to show people that we're doing something different and gain their support, and that, like, that's how we're going to deal with this problem.
And the government with please invite the opposition with.
Essentially, their case line has been this. Look, this movement is dying out. This is our Hail Mary effort. What we do is we do something extremely radical in the hope that everybody will come and join this movement. China will be forced to negotiate with us, alright, and that's how we can at least get partial reforms, right? Understand there are a lot of problems with this, right? There was a point when this movement was extremely strong, and that time you couldn't do anything to force China to have a conversation with you, right? China just simply decided this policy of waiting it out till these people got tired, got up and left. What we were asking you, and we've been trying to ask you this all this while, what will stop China from doing it again, right? And considering the fact that this time you are antagonizing them even more, you are going completely against their values. You did not give us one reason that why China will want to sit on that negotiating table with you and talk to you and try and reason something out, right? And that's extremely important. Now, what else do we talk about, right? Understand that this has been their case line all along, right? And a lot of things that they say become sort of antithetical to this idea, right? Now, Partha and their first speaker's case line essentially was, look, even if we don't get full democracy, it's still alright, because then we can get these partial reforms, right? And partial reforms is exactly what we're talking about, essentially, right? So, in light of that, when you look at the arguments that they have made, all of them fail. The idea of cultural identity, right? Their idea of being able to freely propagate their cultural identity will only exist in their best scenario, which is when they get full democracy, right? If they get partial reforms by their own admission, they will not be able to freely propagate this cultural identity. They will not be able to freely have all these media houses and Facebook and Twitter and all of those things, right? And that's something that they haven't really done. Sit down. Alright, and there is this another thing that essentially there is this another thing that they've been trying to propagate in the initial two speeches, right? The idea that China can't afford another fight because it's already going through some sort of conflict. Understand that that's absolutely not true, right? There is no conflict that China is fighting right now, right? And most importantly, there isn't a nation in the international politics that would like to go on a collision course with China. We asked them in their first speech to name one person, one country that will come and defend these people in... You can't do that. Sit down. Alright? You can't name one person. And just by saying US, you can't really talk about it. Given that Afif gave you analysis about why US is not ever likely to do something like that, right? And that's extremely important. And please stop tagging your POS. Right? Now, what else did they tell you, right? And this they thought was the best part of the case, right? The idea that China can't treat you like Tiananmen Square. We already considered that. You didn't have to waste your time telling us why China will not do something like Tiananmen Square, right? What you had to tell us was why China will not let you hanging dry and actually come and talk to you before this movement completely becomes over, right? And that's essentially the problem. Now, and this is very important considering the fact that both sides have agreed that once this movement dies down, something like this to come up will take an extremely large amount of time or could potentially be impossible. In light of that, there is a ticking time bomb that we need to address, right? We need to come to a solution before this movement completely fizzles out, right? That's the framework that you need to judge this debate against, right? Number 4, right, and this is extremely important because from our side of the house, we told you this very importantly, right? In our very first speech, we told you why China is more likely to come to the negotiating table in our scenario, right? Number 1, we told you that, look, it is a minor irritant for China because yes, this movement did get some amount of foreign press, right? And so understand that they will want to do away with this and do away with this in a peaceful manner. Therefore, they are more likely to come to a compromise with you. More importantly, even if they give you these really small reforms, the advantage that China has is that it can now claim the higher moral ground of liberty without actually having given you some rights, right? So we are the only team that has shown you any sort of incentive for China to actually come and engage with this movement, right? And we tell you that even if democracy is the final answer for Hong Kong, we tell you that the timing is not right, and this is essentially one of their ideas, that the timing is right. They don't explain to us why the timing is right. Given the characterization, we told you that look, there is no one to cover the movement. It's just a bunch of students who are sitting there and trying to protest, right? Alright, yeah, I'll take you now.
You just agreed that people won't die and it won't be as bad as you initially portrayed. Given now that the cost of the movement is not much, and you're a movement for freedom or for democracy, what is your alternative? How will you show that they will not become completely subservient to China?
Alright, so here's the deal, right? We tell you that this is a partial reform and that's a strategic win that we can talk about. This is how we begin a dialogue with the state, right? Necessarily, right? Because understand this, right? Both agree that once the movement dies down, this is finished, right? So the risk that you're running to take is that we get absolutely nothing or we get complete democracy. Because the harms that you talk about will not. So in that case, partial reforms won't actually figure into your case, right? So essentially what you want is either that we have nothing and this movement completely dies down, or that we need absolute democracy, right? We tell you both of these scenarios are not acceptable to us, and we tell you that it's much better for the movement and for the social dialogue that we take the strategic win right now, quit while we are ahead, and then try and push for reforms continuously, right? The fact that they have engaged with us shows us that there is a probability that they will engage with us in the future, right? But we tell you that that cannot happen in a manner that's extremely mind if you're going to be unreasonable with them, right? And that's extremely important. So now, what are the 3 questions that you should ask yourself as adjudicators when you're judging this debate, right? Now understand, is the movement conducive to demanding, is it conducive to demanding something that is extremely radical, right? Now we tell you, both sides agree that the movement is fading, right? They said that this is a Hail Mary effort and the risk that you're willing to take is that we either get full democracy or this movement goes down under and we always live like we've been living, right? We tell you that let's take a strategic concession, let's take a strategic win, right? And then try and continue this dialogue because in the long term it might lead to something more substantial, right? Because the movement isn't going to come back, right? We also told you that China can wait it out like it has done before. When this movement was at its peak, there were all major media houses coming there and China was under a lot of pressure. But like they've shown that they are absolutely okay bearing this kind of pressure and they don't care about their image in the world that much that they will completely they'll sort of compromise with the values that they hold extremely dear to themselves. Right? And so therefore we believe that the movement is not conducive for this. Right? Now the second question then is what is the best way forward for this movement? Right? The best way forward for this movement is to have like some sort of policy where the best way forward for this movement is to take a strategic win right now so that we are in a continuous dialogue with the state, right? Understand, because it's either that or in their scenario that there is nothing that we can ask them about, right? What else do we tell you, right? And this is extremely problematic. There's the idea of economy, right? They're saying that if China takes over, companies will not come in. Understand that economics is decided by law, right? So the idea of taxation and all those things are defined by law. China is not going to wake up one morning and say, you know what, tomorrow we double all the taxes in Hong Kong, right? There's a very structured way in which business is conducted, right? And China has a lot of incentives to ensure that Hong Kong remains the economic hub in Asia, right? So they are not going to do anything that will potentially harm the economic policies, right? And therefore, for all these reasons, we are very, very proud to oppose.
Thank you, opposition reply. May I please invite opposition reply?
Mr. Speaker, the whole case is predicated on the idea that China has lost its bargaining power, and the precedent that the state to give this to substantiate this is that there are ships